human beings, human-related issues, the human dimension factors that threaten wildlife and protected areas. Of course, we have ecological issues like population size, genetic drift, and stuff like that. And then we have climate change, which is a major subtopic in this conference. If you just take those three and interrogate each one of them and establish what their contribution is towards poor prospects of the future of wildlife management, you can see that each one of them has its own unique threats, but also where they intersect, there are issues. For example, climate change intersecting with human dimension issues. There will be issues about displacement, resource scarcity, and stuff like that. So you can look at all these three spheres and look at how they interact with each other to make the future of wildlife conservation much more complicated. I just want to remind you what we all know. Human-wildlife conflicts in Kenya are intense. Actually, many people think that it's the main source for wildlife mortality than any other cause. Talked about diseases and other things, but human-wildlife conflict-related mortality to even endangered species is much more higher. So if you look at this map, it happens everywhere, but it is closely related to where there are major protected areas. Yeah, we know these factors and these things from Kenya Wildlife Service. They say that Tsavo is leading, followed with the southern region. If you look at the conservation regions of KWS, and these are only the reported human-wildlife conflict areas. So I always ask a question, what percentage of unreported human-wildlife conflicts are there? What makes people to report and what makes them not report? What percentage of actual conflicts are there? And there are so many reasons why people will not report cases. Maybe because they have given up, or because nothing has happened in the past, or because they don't have time, or because they are not aware. And because of that, I can actually suggest that maybe even these reported statistics are possibly maybe 50% or even less of the actual conflicts that occur. The point is that they are very widely distributed in Kenya, especially connected with the where we have major conservation areas. There's one thing about human-wildlife conflicts that when you look at the statistics, especially from KWS, they don't look as significant, and that includes human death and human injury. But if you are on the ground in these conservation areas and you have observed what happened, even though this human death and human injury can be the least of the conflicts between people and wildlife, they are the most emotive. If you want people to block a road, let somebody injure, or let wildlife injure or kill a person. It's very, very personal. So I always caution that while human death and human injury might actually represent very few cases reported, this is one of the things that make people hate wildlife and hate conservation agencies. Where I do my work, they say that if an elephant hurts you, it will take 2 days for anybody to notice. If you hurt an elephant, it will take minutes before the choppers are there. So these kind of things are the ones that really touch on people's attitudes. And so it's very important to note that of all the conflicts, injury and death to people might be a minor or a minority, but it is very important in terms of shaping attitudes and relationships with local communities. Again, if you look at the whole of Kenya, human-wildlife conflicts are not associated with lions, elephants, hyenas. It actually involves so many species. Yesterday we heard about snakes. But if you look at issues that happen in Western, or issues that happen around Lake Victoria, there will not be lions, there will be hippos, there will be crocodiles, there will be snakes. So if you look at this list, in all the conservation areas of KWS, you have a whole lot of animals that are involved in human-wildlife conflicts. In fact, where there is a wild species and there are human beings, there is always going to be conflicts. I know that you guys know these facts. Around independence, the population of Kenya was very small, was about 9 million. 2025, we're estimating that we have about 60 million. So increase of human population and increase in localized population of wildlife, whatever species it is, That's one way in which we increase human-wildlife conflicts. We've been also told that between about the 70s, the number of wildlife has declined by over 60% from the 70s to now. Those are the things we've been hearing in this conference all the time. The number of wildlife species, wildlife distribution have declined significantly in all the major conservation areas of Kenya. The question is, how much will they decline before we don't have them? So these are statistics which everyone knows. I don't know about other East African countries, but we know that we have lost a lot of large mammals in Kenya, a lot by over 60% from 1970s to now. The other thing you notice is that even though, the human-wildlife conflicts is increasing, the number of wildlife populations are declining, there is also an increasing cost to conservation. For example, in 2017, if you look at CSR, you just look at the money that exchanged hands in terms of CSR projects in conservation, they rose from 23 million in 2017 to about 600 million in 2020. That means that the cost of conservation is actually going up as well. If you look at the number of fences that have been made in all the hotspots from Abadeas to Amboseli to Tsavo, they are about 2.3 billion, meaning that there is a lot of money that is actually invested in terms of dealing with the costs of conservation. If you look at KWS itself and you look at its budget, around 2018, they spent only 341 million compared to 2022 when they asked for 1 billion. The point is that wildlife is declining, human-wildlife conflicts is increasing, many species are being involved in this conflict, and the cost of conservation is also increasing. So the question is, all these things put together, how long can we have wildlife in Kenya? And how long can we have viable protected areas in Kenya? I tried to answer that question, but it was a very difficult one. You know, there are several approaches you can use depending on how you are trained in school. You can use viability models. You can look at demographic, genetic traits and stuff like that, and then answer that question. You can also do some spatial modeling, encroachment on protected areas and so many other things, the diminishing of corridors and dispersal areas, and maybe give an estimate on how long it will take or if Kenya has any good meaningful prospect for wildlife. For me, I just chose the easier way. I wanted to ask experts. So I did a sociological approach that looks for experts using a purposive method, look for people in all conservation areas in Kenya who are knowledgeable, who have done a lot of work in conservation, or even local people who know a lot about the trends in populations, dispersal areas and stuff like that. So we looked for about 20 people from all conservation areas of KWS and asked very simple questions, 5 of them. What is the impact of people on wildlife? Score, explain your answer, all right, and give examples. Just 3 things. Score it, explain your answer, and give examples. And we used a 5 Likert scale. 1 meaning very poor or very low, 2 poor or low, 3 average or medium, 4 good or high, and 5 very high or very good and very high. So just a 5 scale point. You answer each of those questions, give examples, and also give the reason for your answer. What is the impact of wildlife on people where you are? What is the impact of people on wildlife? What are they doing and how do you score that? What are the benefit system? How are people benefiting where you are and how do you score that? How about long-term stuff like, establishing migration corridors and doing that? And then all things considered where you are. How do you rate the future of wildlife and protected areas in Kenya? On a scale of 1 to 5. So if you are listening to me, I would like you to try that. I just want you to answer the last question. From all the things you are hearing in this conference and from where you work, irrespective of the species you are dealing with, do you think on a scale of 1 to 5, there is a very low or a very excellent prospects for wildlife? We did that with the help of KWS and with the some funding from Nature Conservancy, and I developed 33 points. So I looked at the impact of people on wildlife, predation, crop rating, blah, blah. I looked at impacts of people to wildlife, blocking migration corridors, spearing, poisoning, everything there. Benefits, employment, CSR projects, ecotourism revenue, long-term strategies like securing corridors, improving tolerance for wildlife, wildlife funding. And then the last one, number 34, I asked them, just give me on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think is the prospects of wildlife in Kenya? So these were my results. When I looked at the impact of wildlife to man, you can see all indicators from predation to crop rating to property damage to insecurity to human death. All the indicators are above average and high. In short, if you look at this is the averages, and this is how it is ranked from each area. It is highest in southern region, followed by Tsavo, and it is least in western. If you look at these scales, 1 to 5, they are relatively high. So impacts of wildlife to people is generally very high. How about impacts of man on wildlife? Impacts of people to wildlife, okay? Now, because I was interviewing human subjects, I don't know if there was a bias here, but you can see that it was low and average. So according to many of the people I talked to, they don't think that human beings are affecting wildlife in terms of harassment, retaliation, and all those. They don't think it is very high. Nevertheless, cost was leading, followed by southern Amboseli and surroundings. How about impact of man on space? Wildlife space is a big deal. We'll talk about that shortly. Blocking of migration corridors, conversion of dispersed areas. We've had that lecture today. If you look at the scores are high. It means that the impact of man generally in Kenya, the effect of man on dispersal areas and corridors is very high. And that's a really big problem. You heard also today that they are still mapping, so we have not done anything yet. And you heard my colleagues ask the question, when will we start to implement? So we are way behind in terms of doing something. They gave the reasons, and those are the scores for each conservation area based on KWS. There are drivers for human-wildlife conflicts. I looked at incompatible land uses, increasing human population, poverty, resource competition, increase in local wildlife population. I asked them to rate, and as you can see, the drivers are generally very high, from about medium to high, and you can see the scores. I have 5 minutes. So we looked also at the opinion, the attitudes of people, and the attitude of people. Benefits. We looked at benefit system, and they think benefits are low. And if you look at the attitudes, they were either indifferent or negative. That is the scenario. So if you put all these things together, and you look at all the scoring we've done, southern region has a very poor prospect for wildlife in the future, and most of them were around 3, meaning that it can go either way. The conclusion from this work is that the prospects for wildlife in Kenya is bleak. It's not good. And you can ask anybody, whatever parameters they use, you will see that it's not good. I did some statistics a little bit from this work, and I'm going just to go fast. From the 34 variables that I looked at, the 14 that were most important are listed here: ecotourism all the way to space expansion. Those are the most important. But if you do stepwise linear regression just a little bit and go deep into the matters, you will find that there are 2 important variables that will actually influence the future of wildlife in Kenya: adequate wildlife funding and space expansion. Things to do with the corridors, things to do with the conservancies. Anything that expands space for wildlife in Kenya, that is going to be a win. That's number 1. Number 2, the impact of wildlife on people. Many people say they retaliate against wildlife. The most important thing is what wildlife is doing to people. Crop raiding, killing people, injuring people, livestock depredation, including the perception of people. These 2 indicators and 2 factors were the most important. So what is the conclusion? If you have very little money and you need to prioritize what to do to rescue wildlife conservation in Kenya, what can you focus on? And from my work, there are only 2 things. fund increase of space, and fund reducing the costs, the impacts of wildlife on people. So that means you increase the funding for KWS, you increase the funding for conservancies, you increase the funding to local communities that are employing local scouts, all right? You increase protection of people's properties and livelihoods from wildlife, and you expand space. Those two. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Let's give him another round of claps. So we move to the second presenter, Mohammed Hussein, who will talk about the encroachment on water corridors drivers, farmers giraffe conflicts along River Tana ecosystem in Eastern Africa, Eastern Kenya, sorry. Mohammed? Karibu sana.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohammed Hussein, and I'm an MSc student, and this is part of my research. The title is Encroachment on Water Corridors Drives Farmers Giraffe Conflict Along River Tana Ecosystem in Eastern Kenya. I also work with the Somali Giraffe Project that focuses on conserving the endangered reticulated giraffes in Eastern Kenya through research, education, and community-based conservation. All right. So before I talk about the research questions, the methodology, I would like to give you an overview of the problem that we have there, the research problem. That focuses on the water. This is the only source of water, permanent source of water in the entire region. That is Tana River. And the river has been encroached. As you can see, the color of the water, it suggests a lot of pollution, industrial discharge, be it the floodings, because normally when it rains from the highland, the water drains all the way to Garissa, to the river. And also there's a lot of farms that have been established alongside the river, and the invasive species, Prosopis juliflora, locally known as Madenge. So this is part of the problem as farmers are doing irrigation. They have established a lot of farms along the riverbanks, and the major crop is mangoes, and the mangoes have flowers, and these flowers are becoming part of giraffe diet. So the giraffes, as they are coming for the water, they pass through these farms where they feed on these mango flowers. So these two pictures are comparing before giraffe crop raiding and after. And these are the flowers that develop into a fruit. So you can imagine the loss the farmer goes through. And also the entire region, we don't have any protected areas. The giraffes and the livestock just roam side by side, and also with the community, and they are competing with the little resource available, be it forage, be it water, and be it even space where they rest or the habitat. So this is the NDVI values. We are trying to compare the high density in terms of vegetations alongside the river, and we realized that it's Prosopis that is actually have overtaken the indigenous trees, especially along the river. And this has blocked the historic water corridors where the giraffe used to come and drink the water. So this is also pictures. You can see those giraffes there. You can barely see them despite their height. And if you are not from that region, you may think that these giraffes are living in a very beautiful area, but that is just prosopis. The picture below is also a corridor where the farmers have blocked and the giraffes can't access to the river. This is two photos comparison of before when I visited. The prosopis were a bit scarce, and the picture down it's showing that the water point is somehow partially closed because of the prosopis. So a part of the methodology, I think this is the wrong presentation. But anyway, this is part of the results where we selected 220 households, and majority have responded that the water corridors were invaded by Madenge with around 60%, followed by a conversion of land into farms, and also human settlement as human populations are increasing. The other part was the issue of figuring out the effectiveness of supplementary feeding that was being done by the Somali Giraffe Project, where the giraffes were being provided with acacia pods and provision of water. And we were trying to compare two different groups of giraffes to see if actually the ones that are supplemented are raiding the farms fewer compared to the group that are foraging naturally. So the result was that Bulargi had the fewest crop invasion because of the supplementary feeding, while Kamude and Sankuri had a higher number in terms of giraffe presence. This is an independent t-test we conducted. This box plot also, we did a comparison between the dry season and the wet season. And we find out that during the drier season is when the giraffes are invading the farms more compared to the wet season. Also, the collaring part, the first phase where we tagged the giraffes, we came to realize that giraffes come to the water corridors and the water points during the drier season compared to the wet season. The blue color is the wet and the orange one is the dry season. Mainly because during the rainy season, there's patches of like dams have water, and during the dry season, they only rely on the river because the dams dry up. This one is also the giraffe movement along the wetlands, where they are always present and they always roam around in the wetlands in the area. This is, I updated my presentation with the methodology, but I was given the wrong one, but I think that was helpful. I'm more than happy to respond if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and best of luck with your studies. So, we are not doing so well with time. I know the presenters have like 15 minutes, and if they can do the presentation in less than 15 minutes, we'll appreciate because of the activities ahead. So our next presenter will be Hindra Akisime. She'll be talking about examining the causes and extent of human-wildlife conflict in Queen Elizabeth National Park, lesson for lasting coexistence. Hindra, karibu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Go to the first slide. Thank you. Good afternoon once again. I bring you greetings from Uganda. I'm called Aksimi Rehindra. I work as a senior research officer at Uganda Wildlife Research and Training College. It is a similar institute as this one, but only that for us we're in Uganda. We are based inside Queen Elizabeth National Park, which is in the western part of Uganda. And we can literally throw a stone to Congo. Okay, so my study is about exploring the causes and extent of HWC in Queen Elizabeth for sustainable coexistence. I know we have talked about human-wildlife conflict since the beginning of the conference and even before, but it is also important that you understand the dynamics of where you're from. So these are the commonest headlines that we have in newspapers. If you see on my, I don't know if that's my right or my left, you will literally see this in newspapers. The local people poisoned 11 lions, and sometimes these are a result of retaliatory kills. Find a lion ate one goat, and the locals kill 11 lions. And of course, we lose revenue, and we lose biodiversity. So these are some other headlines you will find in a newspaper. Mostly you'll find lions dead and leopards. I think even if I don't dig much into the introduction, the chair told us to be cautious of time. As we had discussed before, human-wildlife conflict is a big challenge in conservation. And Queen Elizabeth, for those of you who don't know, it is a biosphere protected area. By biosphere, we mean there are communities living within the national park. For example, in Queen Elizabeth, we have 11 fishing villages. We have communities. Imagine Naivasha in the middle of a national park. So you will find, because of its nature, also human-wildlife conflict cases are many compared to other parks like Murchison Falls National Park, which is literally plainly for conservation. So most of the cases, all the problems that you will find, people lose crops, people lose livestock, predation, animals kill both livestock and they also kill human beings. Even, you see how you have Kenya Wildlife Service? In Uganda, we have Uganda Wildlife Authority. Now imagine being staff of Uganda Wildlife Authority and you leave your baby sleeping in the chair and a leopard enters and it kills the baby. Now there the conflict hits home. Of course, they also cause property damage and human fatalities, like I've mentioned. So this study was conducted between June 2024 up to June 2025. Some of the objectives, we wanted to find out the factors or the drivers that contribute to human-wildlife conflict in Queen Elizabeth, to determine the extent. The first presenter did the same thing in Savo, where as much as you're talking about human-wildlife conflict, it is to what extent, or it is what is the severity of this problem that you're talking about, and eventually recommend effective strategies for coexistence. I remember yesterday, Dr. Eva, I think if I remember correctly, she was talking about conflict to coexistence. At the end of the day, human-wildlife conflict is not going anywhere. We have to find a way of coexisting with each other. The map shows some of the sub-counties and the parishes that we conducted our study in. Mostly of these sites were purposively selected based on the secondary data of Uganda Wildlife Authority. So in their database, most of their human-wildlife cases are in the parishes that are in that map. The blue, that is Lake George, which is connected by a 32-kilometer channel, which is called Kazinga Channel, and that is Lake Edward, which we share with Congo. The methodology overall, we conducted 120 household surveys. We also conducted focus group discussions and also engaged key informants who are mostly stakeholders in management. And the tools, we used the Conflict Severity Index tool. We also used PRA, which is Participatory Rural Appraisal, and GIS mapping to get the points that are normally affected by human-wildlife conflict. So from our results, we realized elephants, they take the peak. We collected over 2,964 crop raiding cases. And mostly, if you were to look at the other parishes that I showed you, you will find these are the parishes where you find the wire fence has not been erected. Then we have an issue with lions and leopards and hyenas, which normally kill goats and cattle, and hippos and elephants. They are also responsible for human injuries and deaths. In socio-economic impacts, you cannot talk about human-wildlife conflict and you don't relate it to wildlife economy. You have to see how much people are losing. We discovered that each household, or 80% of the households, they have suffered severe losses through crop raids of maize, cassava, and beans. And in the communities that we conducted our study in, over 28% of the households that have been affected do not receive institutional support. By institutional support, normally in Uganda, I don't know how it's done here, if an elephant comes and it damages your crops, you're compensated. Or if a lion comes and eats your livestock or your cattle, you're compensated. But you will still find through interviews that people are not happy with even the compensation. That is if you receive it. Also, the process of receiving that compensation, sometimes it is long. You find you lost the cattle in 2024 and you're being compensated now. And even you're being compensated little money. So still from our study, we were trying to see which strategies the communities are using to cope with HWC. Some of them, they cannot wait for help. They have come up with measures of building kraals, trenches, building community trenches or digging community trenches. Some, they have flashlights that are powered with solar to scare away the animals. Some have dogs and improvised fences. If you see the image above, there is a small village in Uganda. It's called Nyakatonzi. It's occupied by the Basongora people. These people have trained their dogs to tackle even a lion. So if you are a researcher and you go there without protection, you will be treated as a lion. You see that small dog there, it will tackle you. So another innovation, you've seen a box with goats inside. It is safer for the goats to be in a box than roam freely. You peel matoke, you put the peelings inside and they eat from there. This place, they suffer the most because they share. There is literally, you find your powering water in a national park. There are other innovations from other villages. Chili dung, or sometimes they get red pepper and mix it in their old clothes that they no longer wear. You see how you hang your clothes after washing? So you create a fence around your home, then you put your clothes which are infused with chili. The elephants don't cross. I don't know if you have such innovations here in Kenya. Then we have buffer crops. If you neighbor with chimpanzees and you plant garlic, the chimpanzees don't cross. It's a non-palatable plant. And then we also have community scouts. We also discovered some institutional challenges, like I had mentioned, delayed and inadequate compensation. You lose a cattle which is valued at 1.5 million Uganda shillings, but you find you're compensated maybe 500 Uganda shillings. Also, revenue sharing, sometimes you find it is sent to a parish, but the parish chief decides to first use it before it reaches the people. Such institutional challenges. Then cultural dimensions that were discovered during the study. There are some tribes that completely don't hunt. The Nyakatonzi people, the Basongora people, they do not hunt, they do not do poaching. They do not kill an animal for meat. So you will find in such a place, as much as there is human-wildlife conflict, they still conserve the animals. And also, some people are pissed. Goodwill has eroded because they support conservation, but still they don't benefit anything from it. We discovered most of our findings were aligning with other researchers across the world. Elephants and carnivores, they continue to be the biggest problem. Governance failures, for example, delayed compensation and weak revenue sharing. Also, local coping innovations. They are not that resilient and they require institutional support. And also the cultural taboos that I've told you about, they present opportunities for conservation partnerships. So in conclusion, HWC in Queen Elizabeth is severe, but as much as it is severe, it is multidimensional. And the people who stay near the park are the most vulnerable. And also, if the current governance mechanisms are very inadequate, but still people show willingness to coexist if they are given the right support. We are left with recommendations, then I finish. We recommended from our study that the concerned stakeholders can strengthen compensation mechanisms. Other stakeholders can increase or decentralize revenue sharing. Because in Uganda, you find revenue sharing is done from the bottom. The down people don't see it. If they can be engaged in these things, maybe they can be better equipped. To scale up predator-proof kraals and solar fencing. These kraals are an initiative of the local people. Imagine if this fencing is funded by the concerned authorities. And also sometimes the human-wildlife conflicts, they happen because the cattle go into protected areas to seek for water. But imagine if these people are provided with water points and pasture, it would also reduce on human-wildlife conflict. We also recommended an alternative livelihood source and also to incorporate traditional knowledge and cultural values. I would like to speak more on the last recommendation. I don't believe the elephants and lions have just come. These things were there before us. So we need to ask ourselves, how did our forefathers coexist with them and tap into that traditional knowledge? I will leave you with a few pictures of human-wildlife conflict in Queen Elizabeth. I had so many, but I had to reduce them. We have a crop raid. The elephant below, someone named it Mary. I don't know why. But this elephant literally stays in the community. It's an orphan. It fears to go to the wild. So it stays with the community. If you leave your matoke, it will eat it. But people used to eat. And there we have 2 dead lions in the neighborhood. With that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Indra. Let's appreciate her again. And we also receive greetings from Uganda. So from Uganda, we go down to Masai Mara. I welcome David Kimtai Koresh, who will talk on geospatial patterns and behavioral responses for elephants to cattle mortality risk in pastoralist Masai Mara landscape, Kenya. He's a person I've known for quite a long time, very knowledgeable with the studies of elephants, and his presentation will be very interesting. Karibu sana, David.
Thank you, Sakam. Good afternoon. Always a challenge to present after lunch, but I'll try. As he says, we've been together in Masai Mara. While he was chasing lions, I was chasing elephants. Sorry for that. So I think most of us know an animal called elephant. If you don't know it, just come to Savo. I guarantee you'll see one or two. I've been doing something in Masai Mara on the geospatial elephant behavior ethology, that is it. I don't know if I'm audible. So in Masai Mara, we have elephants, and I used to follow them. So we are talking of human-wildlife conflict. That is the human perspective. What about the elephant? How does it look at you? From the elephant's perspective, what do you mean to that elephant? Because we say elephants are chasing people from maybe blocking roads, destroying infrastructure. But have we ever thought of the elephant itself? Someone said, elephants have been there. Maybe you came later, or we came together. But again, we always talk of human aspect of the whole matter. But I'm saying this as a scientist to look at an animal. So this paper, we did it, and it came out this year, January. Those are the co-authors. Flora Namo is from Karatila University. Lillian Apollo from WRTI, maybe she's around. Lillian Apollo, you can raise your hand. And then we have Mika C. Janda, is from Helsinki, Finland. Mine is very simple. It's a very simple experiment that we did. The paper has so many sections, and I did a PowerPoint in relation to the whole paper. But because of time, let me just go to the interesting bit, the experiment part of it. So what I did, I went to Narok. That is the nearest town to Masai Mara. I bought 2 bells with different resonance. One, you'll hear them when we play. And then I went close to elephants in a vehicle, of course, tied the bells, and then played them and recorded the behavior of the elephants. It was amazing. Some could come some could just come straight to the vehicle, and sometimes you had to flee the scene. Sometimes they would just run away. Sometimes they could just freeze. So that means we are also interfering with their behavior. As much as we say they are also causing problems to us, they're also having a problem from us. So maybe we could play. I have a very short clip on what I was doing in the field. There were several. I did so many of them. But this is one of them. So we could just drive close to a group, and one of my assistants could just go behind the vehicle while I do the video recording and capturing the behavior. So as you can see, these elephants are just relaxed.
Very big group of 16 with a huge matriarch.
You can hear the sound of the vehicle. So we started playing the bells, and you can see the behavior. They are searching for the stressor. This is the matriarch, she's the lead. They have now frozen. They are standing and they're doing what we call snorkeling. And you see the trunks. Those people who come from the ocean maybe know about snorkeling. So basically, they are not sure of where the stressor is coming from. Because you see, when they do it high, it means the stressor is far away. But they are confused because they are not seeing any livestock. They are not seeing any human beings, but they are seeing a vehicle. So they start bunching up, coming together, because that's the only way they can defend themselves. The young ones will go in the center, and the big ones will just be around. And they'll move together. Up to now, they're not so sure of where the bells are coming from. You see that kind of behavior? So as much as we could be saying elephants are doing ABCD to us, look at that behavior. Already there's an aggression behavior, and then they'll move away running. But they were calm when they were coming, and because of our presence, they associate the bell with a human being, they associate livestock with human beings, and so that's what happens. Thank you. So for my presentation, I will not go into science. We did a lot of analysis, regressions, correlations, using even R, so that we could see if there was anything linking these elephants. The ones in the Masai Mara National Reserve, the community area, and the conservancies. And there's a paper we did, which I'll give you the link for you to go and see exactly what happened that time when you're doing this. I've just picked that I could call a practical bit of it to show you that as much as we are saying there's human-elephant conflict, or we call it interaction these days, we are also partly to be blamed. Because if you can separate what we call spatial, separate the time when we have these guys feeding and when you are also doing your own activities, we have niche separation, then we could not be having problems in terms of that kind of negative interaction. Maybe you can just go through the other slides. Okay, I can just continue, there's no problem. Because this is my subject, I can do it even closing my eyes, no problem. So, these elephants are getting stressed from our activities, anthropogenic activities. What we should be talking about is, how can we separate their niche and ours? Is it possible? Because their survival will depend on the niche separation. So just like any other research activity, you have the objectives, and I don't want to go on to that. This Masai Mara, the study area, the lower part, the red one is Masai Mara, this one here. And then these are the conservancies, and then the general community area. Next, please. So just to spice it up, being a scientific paper, we had to do this, geospatial analysis, observation, mortality risk assessment. Next one, please. So let me not go into this. Basically, the analysis that we did, all these tests were undertaken, even including one called Cochrane, Mantel, and Zell, I don't know. But that's what I did. Yeah. The name is technical, but the analysis runs. So the key findings, of course, is you could see the patterns because of the behavior, especially where we had humans. Then we did kernel density, just back. And we found the concentration of the problem to be around there. This is Masai Mara, this is the conservancies. Next, please. Next, this is still analysis. So in discussion, I'm trying to be brief because you know the problem where it is. Thank you. I know I have 5 minutes to go now, and the topic is becoming more interesting. But again, from this sitting, we should be thinking about the implications for elephant conservation, pastoralist wildlife coexistence strategies, limitations, and future research. Because without these ones, we have no future, as Professor Moses Okello Makonjo, who actually saw my concept and is here to answer some of the tight questions that might come after this. Next, please. So I think the policy and recommendations will come from the plenary. Because a researcher just does things and find the results and then disseminate. That's what I did. Thank you so much. I have some publication on elephants in Maasai ecology and the rest. You can always be in touch and you can share. And then I acknowledge also wildlife research, I4, Kenya Wildlife, Narok County, University of Helsinki, Elephant Voices, and of course my mother institution, WRTI. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David, for the interesting study and findings, and especially within the Mara. So I'll still encourage the upcoming presenters to keep time. And I know, as David mentioned, that afternoon is usually not the best time for presentation. And I'll kindly ask all of us just to stand up for 1 minute, stretch a bit. Thank you very much. I think Lake Naivasha are really taking care of us. So from Masai Mara down to neighboring sister country, Tanzania, I have the pleasure to welcome Jane Mary Ntwala. She'll be talking on mitigating human crocodile conflict in Tanzania, a case study of Korongwe, Mkinga, Lodewa, and Uvinza district. Karibu sana, Jane Mary.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So now we are changing from terrestrial to aquatic problems. As he introduced me, I'm Jane Mary Ntwala from Tanzania Wildlife Research Institute, and I will be presenting on human crocodile mitigation initiatives on behalf of my colleague. And basically, I'm specialized in human-wildlife interaction, and now working mostly in conflict issues. I will not present a scientific paper as the others did, but I'm presenting my working experience, especially on the forgotten another predator. This morning we heard about the marsh eagle being another killer in terrestrial environment. Now we are going to see what are the initiatives done by the Tanzania government in mitigating the conflict between human and crocodiles. Well, we have heard a lot on what is happening between people and the wildlife, and what does it mean in human-wildlife conflict. I would say that major efforts have been done a lot in mitigating human elephant or human lions these big predators on terrestrial environment. To some extent, it looks like we have forgotten the crocodiles. The crocodiles that we consider them as deadly are killers in the aquatic environment, especially when you work or when you reside around these aquatic ecosystems. For example, reading through the references, we realized that between 2002, 2008, a total of 377 people who were killed by different wildlife species in Zambia. Out of those, 185 people were killed by crocodile, mostly the Nile crocodile, which is 53%. This is huge. But again, people may ask you, what does it mean by human crocodile conflict? The same. Like what is happening to human snake conflict or human elephant conflict or lion. These are negative interactions. When the goals of human being are interfered by crocodile, or the crocodile goals have been interfered by human being, that is a negative interaction, so it's a conflict on itself. That is a simple definition from IUCN. If you go to IUCN 2004 or literature, you will get the definition of that. And for crocodile, normally, the conflict are fatal. It's very rare when you are caught by crocodile, you will survive. There are very rare cases. So from Crocodile Bite News or database, between 2010 and 2020, it was recorded that there were 65 crocodile attacks. But in reality for us, we feel like that was underestimated because we have so many crocodile attacks in the country. And they indicated what are the main activities that normally, what are the activities where people interact much negatively with the crocodile. So for them, they realized that swimming counted to 37%, while fishing counted for 23%, and I would say to date, we don't have a countrywide data that indicates of how much attacks have been happening in the country. So this is another research gap where scientists you can invest, because we need to know how much crocodile attacks in Tanzania or in a certain place. I haven't heard much since yesterday on the issues of crocodile. Maybe this is the first one. I just had mentioning that the crocodile caused problem, but we have limited information on what is happening in terms of the attacks and the fatal issues or fatal incidences caused by the crocodile. Again, this is normal, like in other bigger predators. These are the issues or the drivers to human-crocodile conflict. Lack of land use, especially on the riparian areas. The issue of population increase is there, again, will not be escaped. But we have a problem of reduced riparian habitats for these species. When we go closer to the riparian areas, we create more interaction with the crocodile. And we have, in our cases, overfishing and the dumping of waste into the rivers or lakes have changed the behavior of crocodile. And so they are more prefer to have what human beings is using than to what they used to eat before. So what are the initiatives the Tanzania government have done? First, it has recognized the crocodile as among the dangerous animals. We have our regulations, we have our conservation scheme, and all these have put crocodile as among the dangerous animals. And so the government, through its National Human Wildlife Management Strategy of 2020-2024, has indicated that this animal has to be considered among other dangerous animal species in the country. So far, giving just a simple example to why it has been taken to that point that this is very, very dangerous. Between 1999 to 2004, there were 28 people who were killed in one of our WMAs called Jukumu, but 57 people were injured. And this is a very small area, just 500 kilometers square. Can you imagine? If you consider this, you take this data and you multiply countrywide, which means the problem is very bigger than the way people are viewing it now. So here we have a serious problem of crocodiles. So in Tanzania, we have 2 species of crocodile. The known one, the Nile crocodile. This is common everywhere. But we have also the African slender-snouted crocodile. But for us, the most dangerous one is the Nile crocodile. What we did as a part of implementing the National Human Wildlife Mitigation Strategy, we went through the areas where there are so many crocodile conflicts. And here, we were implementing the crocodile. We call them crocodile exclusion enclosures, where you prevent people from direct meeting with the predator. It's common in those areas where the problem has been found to be critical. So in Tanzania, we have like 44 districts. These are prone areas. And so far, we intended to construct 50 crocodile exclusion enclosures as a means to mitigate the HCC. But first, we thought to have a bit of data to allow us to have the real feeling where and exactly what is happening, despite being told what are the villages. So we went there and we had some sort of discussion with villagers. And so we worked in those 4 districts, as mentioned in the title. So we wanted to find out. So the first one, that is one single village where we found that in Ludewa district in Tanzania, data indicated from the village offices that between 1990 and 2023, there was 9 people who were killed, and of these, female were the victims. And on the other side, on Kwesewa village in Korogwe, males were more victims than females. So, and in terms of livestock, I would say goats and dogs were more vulnerable. How we did it? Let me go straight. First, we examined. You have to do the site visitations. You have to take all the measurements in those hotspot areas, but based on what the villagers or community members have agreed with the team. And you have to go on-site construction, because the exclusion have to be constructed outside the water, and then you move them to the area that has been selected. So here the site on ground work that we are doing, and the women, okay, we are not behind it. I was doing it. You can see me there. And then you transfer this metal already fixed ones to the specific area, and here we are doing now the real work on installing or constructing the crocodile exclusion enclosures in one of the villages. And the picture there is showing us how it looks like after you finish, you complete it. This is how it looks, and the communities are very happy. Now washing safely, the kids are swimming freely, and discussing with them, they have a feeling like 80% said they feel like these exclosures will solve the problem. And so, to the finishing of this work in those 4 districts we constructed at least 6 exclosures, but we increased the number because we went and worked in the other neighboring district that had the same problem. To the end, we had 11 exclosures. And I would say we are not only depending on exclosures as initiatives, but there are other initiatives, including cropping the problem animals. It's a bit sad because up to that time, 2023-2024, at least 21 crocodiles were killed as problem animals. What did we learn from this? To date, because we are monitoring it, we have noticed that there has no deaths or injuries that have been recorded in those areas where we did the construction of the exclusion fences. But this is not a panacea, it's not a way of solving this problem. We need more solutions. That include even having some water safe point to villages, because most of them have been attacked when they're fetching water, when they're having some other domestic uses in those crocodile-prone areas. So securing water points for domestic will also actually help in mitigating or reduce the conflict. But don't forget land use planning in these areas that have been forgotten. Most of the riparian areas have been forgotten in terms of land use planning. So what we are saying, human crocodile mitigation in Tanzania requires an integration approach where the ministries have to collaborate to make sure that the problem is somehow reduced. Innovation and technology is highly needed in addressing this challenge. To continue with the research, because this area has a lot of research gaps. So we need to have research continuation. Continuing with education to communities, because for us, we managed to train at least more than 900 people to understand on how they can defend themselves or they can join hands with the others to mitigate of what is going on. So shortly, just to wind up, Tawiri is inviting all the researchers, partners to join hand with us to do much of the research so that we'll have some good recommendation to decision and policymakers on how we can reduce and mitigate human-wildlife conflict. Those are some of the easier catches for crocodile. And thank you. Before I take this mic to the moderator here, please, we are also inviting you for the coming conference, the 15th Tawiri Conference. This second conference here actually was born out of this conference. We are doing similar humorous work, what WRTI is doing. We are a research-based organization in Tanzania. So we have been doing this kind of conferences since 2000. And now we are going to have the 15th Tawiri Conference. We have given you some brochures and the other banner is there. When you scan, you will get all the contents of the coming conference. Please come. We'll be happy seeing you again in Arusha, where we'll be joining again with our twin sister here, WRTI from Kenya. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jane Mary. Let's appreciate her again. And thank you very much for the invitation. And I think I'm pretty sure participants will be able to attend. Sorry about that. All right. From Arusha, we still remain in Tanzania. So I have the pleasure to invite Casey Betty. She'll be talking about Beyond the Safari, what satisfies nature tourists in northern Tanzania. Kesi, karibu sana.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, my name's Beatrice Kesi. I'm a PhD candidate at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU, and also I work for Tanzania National Parks. And today I'm going to present part of my PhD study on tourism. Now we are going to move from the conflicts, the human-wildlife interactions to tourism. And my title is Beyond the Safari, What Satisfies Nature Tourists in the Northern Circuit, the famous Northern Tourism Circuit in Tanzania. Now we are looking at the recreational value of biodiversity. Yeah, so I'm going to present on behalf of my co-authors, who are my supervisors. And to start with, this study, we designed it to investigate the overall levels of tourists. We want to investigate the overall levels of tourist satisfaction with the protected areas in the northern Tanzania, but also we want to identify the factors that influence tourist satisfaction with biodiversity attractions and also the tourism services that are offered in these protected areas. So we developed 4 predictions that we predicted that there will be substantial differences in tourist satisfaction among protected areas in the Northern Circuit, but also we predicted tourist satisfaction levels will be positively associated with more costly accommodation facilities, for example, the lodges, and also time spent by tourists in the protected areas. And also we predicted that satisfaction may also be further affected by the type of travel arrangement, whether you travel by package or private. So we thought it might affect the level of satisfaction and the source of travel information, where you got your travel information. And the last prediction we had, we thought also the socio-demographic factors, such as age and gender, might further explain variation in tourist satisfaction. So our methodology, as I said before, that this study was conducted in northern Tanzania, the famous tourism circuit in Tanzania, whereby most of the tourists, wildlife tourists, visit while in Tanzania. And these protected areas are Serengeti, Lake Manyara, Tarangire National Park, Arusha National Park, and Kilimanjaro National Park. So there are 5 national parks and 1 conservation area, which is Ngorongoro Conservation Area. These are important tourist attractions in our country because they are famous, but also they generate significant amount of revenue, which is used to support biodiversity conservation activities in Tanzania. So they are very important to our national economy. And this study was conducted from August to October. This is during the peak season, where we have more visitation of tourists from different international countries. And also we conducted it in 2022. Data was collected in 2022 and 2023, the same period. And a total of 620 respondents participated in the survey. And we collected data from tourists after entering the national park or the protected area. And we used face-to-face questionnaires to collect data. And we analyzed the data using ARA programming to identify the drivers of tourist satisfaction. And we had two dependent variables. The first one was satisfaction with biodiversity attraction, and the second one is satisfaction with tourism services. So those are our dependent variables, and we had a total of 9 independent variables, which we derived them from literature. From literature review, we came up with a total of 9 independent variables. As you can see them, they are protected area, age, gender, type of travel, source of travel information, first travel to Africa, main travel reason, stay days in the PA, and accommodation facility. So going to the results, I will go first on to see the major tourist and socio-demographic and trip characteristics. You can see 53.7% of the respondents were males, but also 65.2 were they traveled under package arrangement, and also 63.5% of the respondents said that their main travel reason was wildlife attraction. And also 49% traveled under travel agent, and 48.9% spent their night in the lodges. So as I said that we had two response variable. The first one was satisfaction with biodiversity, and we noted that 82.5% of the tourists visiting the Northern Circuit protected areas were satisfied with the biodiversity attraction. And you may appreciate that it's true, because Tanzania is also one of the mega biodiversity country. And also we developed a total of 29 models, the candidate models, to measure satisfaction with biodiversity attraction. And from the 29 models, we had a total of 4 models that were had less than 2 delta AICC, and we considered them as best model. And from the first best model, we developed the predictors of tourist satisfaction with biodiversity attraction. And from our results, we found that tourists who visited the national parks or the protected areas as wildlife attraction being their main reason for visit, they were more satisfied with biodiversity attraction compared to those whose main visit was popularity of the protected area. But also we found that tourists who stayed 3 days and more than 3 days were more satisfied with biodiversity biodiversity attraction compared to those who stayed 1 day. So a 1-day visit, it's like a rush visit. So they were not that satisfied compared to those who spent 3 days and more than 3 days. But also those who visited Tarangire National Park were more satisfied with biodiversity attraction compared to those who visited Arusha and Lake Manyara National Park. And also we found that tourists who spent their accommodation or their nights in lodges were more satisfied compared to those who spent their nights in cottages and camping area. And also we found that female tourists were more likely to be satisfied with biodiversity attraction compared to males. And going to our second response variable, which is tourism, satisfaction with tourism services, we noted that 83.1% of the respondents reported that they were satisfied with tourism services. And from there, we developed a total of 29 candidate models to understand the predictors of tourist satisfaction with tourism services in the northern circuit. And we found a total of 5 models. And from the first model, we noted that tourists who visited Tarangire National Park were more likely to be satisfied with the biodiversity with tourism services compared to those who visited Arusha, Kilimanjaro, Ngorongoro, and Serengeti. So, in summary, overall, we noted tourist satisfaction levels with protected areas in northern Tanzania are high, but also we noted the drivers of tourism satisfaction with biodiversity attractions are the travel zone to the protected area, accommodation facilities, and duration of stay within were the main drivers of tourist satisfaction with biodiversity. And we noted also protected areas significantly influence satisfaction with tourism services. And the way forward is integrating sustainable tourism practices to protect wildlife because we have seen they are the influencers of tourist satisfaction, but also diversify eco-friendly tourism services in PAs to sustain and enhance biodiversity satisfaction levels for longer staying tourists because we saw tourist stay days also influence satisfaction, and continuous improvement of tourism services within the PA to improve satisfaction levels. So I welcome questions, and also for contact you can scan the QR, and thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Betty. Very interesting results and study, and best of luck with your PhD. So from Tanzania, we come back to Kenya. We have Ruth Wamboi, who will be presenting on implication of infrastructural development on primate conservation, a case study of Sykes monkey road kills in Ololua Forest, Ngong, Kenya. So I think it's a virtual presentation. Is Ruth Wamboi around? Oh, all right, yeah, she'll present online. And I was reminded that tomorrow is the last day of the conference, so you are encouraged to report early at 8 a.m. as scheduled, so that the program goes as planned. Thank you. 1 minute as the IT team set up. And then reserve all your questions for the last presentation.
My name is Ruth Wambui from the Kenya Institute of Primate Research. I am a research fellow. My interest are in climate conservation. I graduated with a degree in wildlife and enterprise management. And today I'll be on the implications of infrastructural development and climate conservation. A case study of 6 months.
Yeah, kindly bear with us as we set her presentation.
Please unmute. Please unmute. Ruth?
It's unmute.
Okay. Now you can reintroduce yourself and proceed.
So thank you. Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Ruth Wambui from the Kenya Institute of Research. I'm a research fellow. I graduated with a BSc in Wildlife and Enterprise Management, and today I'll be presenting on the implications of infrastructural development on primate conservation, a case study of 6 monkeys, the Sarcopithecus metis colby, roadkills in Ololua Forest, Kenya. Ololua Forest is located in Ngong, Karen area, and there is a newly built road. It was tarmacked just the other day, and this road has brought severe implications on the 6 monkeys that live in the Ololua Forest. So transport infrastructure, it fragments habitats, which leaves monkeys with fragmented areas. These fragmentations influences the genes flow in monkeys. It also leads to scarcity of food, which makes the monkeys to cross the road in search of food. So we have a slide that shows a picture of a 6 monkey in slide 3. These 6 monkeys are gray in color with a white patch on their neck. They have blackish limbs and a black tail also. The objectives of this study were to determine the impact of the new link road between the towns of Gataka and Mbulbul within the Ololua Forest, and also develop strategies to reduce wildlife vehicle collisions. This is the map of the study area. As you can see, it's located in Karen. The road cuts through the forest. It fragments the Olkeri side. We have the Olkeri side and we have the Ololua Nature Trail side. And the 6 monkeys reside within both sides of the forest. We collected data from 2021 to May 2024. The activity is still ongoing because we still have the monkeys here, so we're still monitoring the vehicle collisions. Data was collected through a roadwalk transect, where we walk through the road looking for the injured 6 monkeys. Then we record the data, whether the knocked off monkey is an adult male or an adult female. So the results we got that 6 monkeys were the most affected. although we encountered other animals like the chameleon, the hyena, we also had the eagle, the lizard, a rat, a snake, and the tree hyrax. But this graph over here shows that sex monkeys were most affected. In the other slide, we have causes of incidents. Vehicles was the leading with 53%. Then unknown causes of incidents at 37% and traps at 10%. On the results discussion, okay, we have a photo of here of a tree hyrax that was knocked, a hyena and a sex monkeys. That's just but a few photos that we have in our gallery. We can continue. So we recorded 19 wildlife vehicle collisions, 81% were fatal, 53% were sex monkeys, and out of the 53%, 70% succumbed to injuries, meaning that only 30% survived. And out of the 53% of sex monkeys, females were the most affected, accounting for 60%, with males 30% and juveniles 10%. The other animals accounted for 10%. The tree hyrax was the leading with 10%, and the others like the snake, the eagle, and the hyena were at 5%. So we assume that the lack of speed bumps along the road is what causes these vehicle collisions, because the vehicles that pass through this road are at a higher speed, and there are no crossing signs that show that there's wildlife that's crossing through the road. So yeah, and the next slide, we have the conclusion. So these monkeys depend on both sides of the forest patches, so they have to cross through the other side of the forest in order to get food. So we recommend that we have crossing bridges that will enable the sex monkeys to cross safely to the other side of the forest as they search for their food. And also we introduce road signages that will be able to inform the drivers that that there are monkeys crossing, not only monkeys, the other animals, because these are forests and it has other animals. We also recommend constructing bumps so that it can limit the speed of these vehicles that are passing through the road. Yes, I would like to acknowledge the team at Kenya Institute of Primate Research, especially the Conservation Biology Department, for contributing in data collection throughout the years, and also the Director General for allowing the implementation of this project, and also WRTI, Wildlife Research and Training Institute, for allowing us to share our results on this study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Let's appreciate her again. So we'll have our last presentation this afternoon from Paris Lare. She'll be covering assessment of impact of land use, land cover change on human-wildlife conflict in Mukogodo landscape, Laikipia County, Kenya. Karibu sana, Paris.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paris Larry from Wildlife Research and Training Institute, and I'm also a student, an MSc student from African Nazarene University. And I'm going to make a presentation on the assessment of the impact of land use, land cover change on human-wildlife conflicts in Mukogodo landscape in Laikipia County. I'm calling it a landscape under pressure. And here the pressure is human-wildlife conflict, which is escalating not only in Laikipia, but globally. And as we know, Mukogodo landscape in Laikipia embodies this crisis due to the rapid land use, land cover changes. So this study I'll be making a presentation on the analysis and the impacts of land use, land cover change on human-wildlife conflict in Mukogodo, and also propose the sustainable solutions for this. I don't think it's a must I tell you this, but land use, land cover changes have a lot of consequences, where the first one is habitat fragmentation, which this reduces the wildlife corridors, and then the biodiversity loss that disrupts ecological processes, and then the major thing here that increased human-wildlife conflict that leads to crop destruction, livestock predation, and human injuries. So my problem statement is that human-wildlife conflict is escalating in Laikipia, and more so the Mukogodo landscape, because of persistent human-wildlife conflict, and there are limited land use, land cover changes studies that have been done in this area. And then there's also resource scarcity, which increases competition of water, grazing resources during drought, and intensifies livestock predation. So my main objective here is to map out the extent of land use, land cover changes between 2009 and 2024, and also to assess the correlation between these changes between these changes are the frequencies of human-wildlife conflict, then evaluate conflict mitigation and propose management. I'll give you a small overview of Mukogodo landscape. It's located in Laikipia North in Kenya. It has a diverse ecosystem. It has a forest, and there are also savannas with conservancies around it. So there are very many stakeholders in this ecosystem, like the pastoralist community, wildlife NGOs, and government agencies. So this, I've already said what the research is focusing on, and that red part shows where Mukogodo landscape is. In there is where you'll have Mukogodo forest and conservancies like Naibunga. So in my methodology, I used mixed methodology approach where I integrated quantitative data, and then I did geospatial analysis with qualitative insights. And the strength of this kind of methodology is that it provides comprehensive understanding of the complex human-wildlife conflict dynamics. So data collection, I collected data using Landsat for the LLUC, land use, land cover change. I used remote sensing, and I collected data from 2009 to 2024 using Landsat imageries. And for 2009 to 2013, I used Landsat 7. For 2014 to 2019, I used Landsat 8, and from 2020 to 2024, I used Landsat 9. And I also did a field survey where we surveyed 98 households, and then we also did key informant interviews and focus group discussions. And then we had human wildlife incidence data from Kenya Wildlife Service and WRTI. So this is how I did my analysis using I did statistical analysis doing regression models to assess correlation between land use, land cover change and human-wildlife conflict. Then geospatial analysis, where I mapped land use, land cover changes using GIS and remote sensing techniques. Then statistical analysis, where I use thematical analysis of interviews and focus group discussions. Oh, something is not showing here. No, it's not showing. Oh, okay. So these are my results on land use land cover change. I am calling it a dramatic reversal in land use trends from 2009 to around 2018. It was almost the same. There were no major changes, but 2019 is when we started noticing the changes, where forest cover in Mukogodo Forest went down by 27 kilometers squared, which was the first decline after years of growth. And then human impact zones, these are buildings and agricultural areas, had a sharp increase. And then we noticed rapid expansion around settlements. So this is, you can see that this is just whatever I was saying explained in, then these are our land use land cover change maps. I only use 3 thematic the forests, human impact areas, then the open vegetation, which includes the shrublands and the forests. So for the temporal trends in human-wildlife conflict, we recorded 312 incidents from 2009 to 2024. And then we realized that the peak conflict are normally during the dry seasons, which lead to, normally during the dry seasons, and then increasing wildlife trends. The wildlife trends are increasing over the past 15 years. And this is what you can see it's increasing, especially from 2021 to 2024. And the way I'd clustered this into 3 years, you'll see that 2009 to 2013, the results were, the incidences were 712, and then it increased to 1,392 between 2019 and 2024. So we also did a hotspot analysis where we did kennel densities estimations, and we also ran a global Moran ice test to identify spatial conflict clusters. And we found that human conflicts are mostly occur around human settlements and habitat boundaries. So this is a kennel density map, with the red showing the highest concentrations in human-wildlife conflict. I think that is around Ilpolei, Kiwanja Ndege, and then the yellow one shows high, and the green shows low, and that low is around the forest area, the Mukogodo forest areas, and Lewa, not Lewa, but what is it? I've forgotten the name. Ilingwesi. So we also did a spatial correlation between land use land cover change and human-wildlife conflict, and we found our Pearson correlation gave us a strong negative correlation, that is R is equals to negative 0.93 between forest cover and human-wildlife conflict. And we also the global Moran test told us that conflict hotspots appear in clusters near settlements and degradation. Then I also did conflict by species, and we found out that elephants are responsible for 75.9% of human-wildlife incidences in the Mukogodo landscape. Other species were leopards, hyenas, and which were normally preying on livestock. And then there were other species like snakes. And we also realized that there's an emerging conflict coming up from the hippos since 2023. and it's on the rise. So we also did did the household interviews, and we noticed that the communities are aware of these strategies that are happening, but they acknowledge the existing measures that is being done, but most of them reported conflicting. They were inconsistent when it came to the effectiveness of these mitigation measures, and also most of them are very willing to engage in conservation programs and to participate when they are called to. So there's an overall implication of this study is like the lessons from this study is applicable to other hotspot studies globally and to inform policy at local, regional, and national levels. And then this study can also give in-depth studies and advanced modeling for predictive solutions. So the first recommendation was to strengthening corridors to protect and enhance wildlife corridors to aid movement, land use policy, integrate land use planning to balance development and conservation, community engagement, engage local communities in conservation, planning, and implementation. Then I'd like to acknowledge my mother institution, WRTI, Kenya Wildlife Service, WIS Academy for funding the studies, and African Nazarene University. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paris. Let's appreciate her again. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for your patience and the amazing presentation from all the presenters. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome all the presenters in front seats for questions. And I have a few announcements to make. So kindly, all the presenters in front sit here for questions and answers. So announcement, so number one, for those who booked Hell's Gate trip, the bus is available and is boarding and will depart at 4:30. So in the next few minutes. So the excursion at Hell's Gate will take 1 hour, 1.5 hours. And for those who won't ride bikes, can hire them at the gate, Hell's Gate National Park. The plate for the bus is KDR 186P, a Wildlife Research Training Institute bus, all to meet at the bus station kindly. So after tea break from 5, there'll be a side event here at Kiboko Hall, a symposium on using citizen science for effective biodiversity conservation, organized by WIS Academy. So for those who are not going for the trip at Hell's Gate, you are encouraged to come and listen for that symposium. So we're going to take a few questions, considering that we allow those who are going for Hell's Gate trip sufficient time. Thank you. Questions? Raise your hand, please. Yeah. So is that in front of you?
My question goes to the presenter on mitigating human-crocodile conflict. Okay. So I was very interested in that piece of presentation. But other than the enclosures, is there any other innovation or any other mechanism that you've also trialed? And then the other question is, what is the effectiveness of the enclosures? You've just given us information on the number, but we don't know how much it has gone to reduce the conflict. And that is 2. The other one is how do you account for human weakness, like maybe I see there is some gate, and I know crocodiles can also be offshore. Sometimes they can even be on land, and they could find their way if the enclosure is open, which is even much more dangerous. And even maybe, have you also mapped the breeding areas? Because sometimes even the young ones can get through those spaces. So those are the questions I wanted to ask concerning that. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. First, you wanted to know other mechanisms. So far, as I was presenting just my experience of working in the field. But there are other areas where other people, like they have been doing the, as I said, zoning on the water areas. But that one is still ongoing because I said there's very less initiatives done, especially in mitigating crocodile conflict in Tanzania. But also a lot of education, training, awareness among community members, because these enclosures that we are doing, we're just doing as I would say demonstration enclosures. It's a bit expensive, I said it. So you cannot do all over the country, but we are doing in very hotspot areas where we know that these are critical and so many people have been died because of crocodiles attacks. But the education awareness campaign, schools in community areas is going on throughout the country and is done by us or other conservation institutions in Tanzania, including TANAPA, TAWA, and all other actors. Then you wanted to know the effectiveness of these ones. Well, we are monitoring it. So far, after construction, we haven't experienced any attack, especially what panacea to the problem. We needed to combine it, including providing safe water in villages so that we rescue more people. So it's another area of research that we want also to explore much, how much and to what extent these initiatives will mitigate the conflict. We haven't done much on the breeding sites. What we did initially is just to explore where the areas where the attacks occurs, but we know sometimes when people go and disturb the breeding sites of the crocodile, there's also the death and the attacks may occur. But we are on the process and we're inviting other people to know that that is a research gap. We need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for the presentation on human crocodile conflict. I'm equally interested because I also live in an area where we have these conflicts on Lake Edward and George, or from Nile crocodiles. We have similar cases. So with the crocodile exclusion enclosures, I would want to know how long they have taken, because water corrodes metals, and in the long run, you find crocodiles entering. Actually, we had one case in Uganda where the crocodile took a person, and now the people said it took somebody from the cage, and now it actually escalated more of the conflict because they looked at the measures not work. They were claiming that these measures are there to just black-mind them, but they are not working. I don't know the other one online about Sky's monkeys, whether she's still online. I had one question for her. I was wondering whether the traps were also as a result of road construction, because she was looking at infrastructure, or whether they were somewhere near the road, or were they as a result of people who were working on the road construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Kiaka from the Visa Academy. I have a question which stems from the overall picture that was painted at the beginning by Professor Kelo, and then that moves to the presentation from Tanzania on tourist satisfaction. You may want to acknowledge Professor Kelo that one thing that will shape the future of human dimensions in conservation, especially in wildlife, is an ethical tourism, which stems mainly from the commodification of wildlife. So wildlife is a commodity that I pay for, I must see the way I like, and if I don't see it as a tourist, I get really, really unhappy about that. So that's a comment that leads me to the question I put to the presentation, which is very nice, from Tanzania. We know that, and it confirms in your studies, that popularity, how marketed the products are, whether it's Serengeti, Masai Mara, and what have you, throughout Africa, that really impels high amount of tourism, the desire for people to go to these places, and they are marketed as unique products. So I must go to Masai Mara, I must go to Serengeti, I must see lions breeding. Those are things that excite tourists. I must see cheetah hunting. I must see, really strange things and unique things. That's really good. But now crossing the other side, these things, this commodification pressure also has unethical behaviors, or impels unethical behavior. The question is, how do we now reach the equilibrium? Unethical behavior in terms of overpopulation, overcrowding. I've seen this countless times in Masai Mara. I'm not so sure if it comes out in Serengeti as well, or in other parks in Tanzania. But if you make the broader picture of Africa, so overcrowding, disturbance of habitats and the behaviors of wildlife, cheetahs hunting, lions breeding. These are things that excite people, and it's really good for the economy when tourists come, because they attract large number of tourists. But they also impels unethical behavior. How can your research, therefore, lead us to creating an equilibrium between these two opposing dimensions in human interaction with the wildlife from the perspective of tourists? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have two questions for Betty on Beyond Safari. One is that, your studies showed that 82% of the tourists were satisfied with the biodiversity attraction. And my question is that when we talk of biodiversity attraction, what does it exactly mean? Maybe because we will really love to get more insight on that, because biodiversity can be, a very rich biodiversity, but there is no lion, there is no elephant, for example. So what does the study show on that biodiversity? And again, on the same, I also saw that Tarangire National Reserve, I don't know, National Reserve or National Park, was highly ranked in terms of satisfaction on biodiversity. So I'm really interested to understand why Tarangire more than the other, I think several other parks. Then also on the other part, 83% of the satisfaction with the tourism services. Maybe if you can also shed some light, if we talk of tourism services, what does it mean? Does it mean food? Does it mean accommodation? Does it mean services? I think that's really, really very important. I know that those might be details, but it's just very important to shed some light on that. And then question on Paris on the Mogogodo landscape. I happen to also have a bit of knowledge or come from that area, but I'm just interested to know the key drivers of these land use changes. And my interest a lot is on the land degradation, because if you look at the periphery or the surrounding environs of Mogogodo Forest. All those conservancies, the land is highly degraded. So I'm just interested to know the level of land degradation as a driver to these land use changes and also the conflict. Then my other question on crocodiles also is that that was really interesting presentation. But my only question is that some of the data or some of the statistics you shared is a lot on human beings' impact. But I'm just interested whether you have some information and whether you're also interested to know the extent of conflict on other animals, particularly the livestock, because I know it's a big thing for the communities. Thank you.
The presenters can take the questions and answer them, and probably make them short as possible because of time constraint. Thank you.
Thank you. I start with the last one, whether we took also data on livestock. Yes. In the villages where we worked also, we sampled some of the conflict, and I said the most affected ones were the goats and the dogs. And actually for the dogs, for the community, when they wanted to know whether the crocodiles are closer, they would throw a dog inside the water, and then that is a most preferred mate for crocodiles. So we did it, but we are still doing it. When we were doing the construction, it was just a kind of acquiring knowledge from the village offices. That's what we got, but we'll do much research on that. We are planning to do it. And the other one was on whether we have experienced any crocodile problem after construction. If I got you, whether they entered into the cages or not. I said that we are monitoring because this work was done between March to May, and we are still constructing more. And I would admit that there was a political pressure on that after so much attacks in the villages. So we were doing it as we call it a short and a medium term solutions. Otherwise, we have to combine with the others, but we haven't yet experienced anything. But when the exclosures are done properly with good measurements, and also if you reinforce with the galvanized wires and the mesh wires and everything that is needed to make it more strong and intact, the possibility of crocodile entering the cage is very minimal. That's what we did. And for rusting, we used to stop rusting, we used the red oxide. And some of these exclosures are movable, especially on the meandering rivers, so they can be moved and taken to other areas because it's more of manual work. So it's easier to move them. Thank you.
I will answer my question on the key drivers of land use, land cover changes in Mogogodo. From my study, what we realize is like the population growth. Towns are being erected almost everywhere. And then another thing was climate change. When you were analyzing the images, you'd realize that there are some times that there were a lot of droughts, and it would really affect the vegetation. But we realized that some of them would come back by themselves, but others now, because of this population increase and towns being erected in various places, then they don't recover very fast. Because you see, once the population has increased, don't forget that now charcoal burning will come in and other activities that now continue degrading the environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will respond to the question raised by Richard. He pointed about how to reach the equilibrium, like in areas where it's overcrowded with tourism activities, like Masai Mara. So yeah, it's a challenge because people like to go to popular areas, but I think one of the way that we can balance the equilibrium, first to understand the carrying capacity of that particular protected area, and also after understanding the carrying capacity, we should come up with, try to practice sustainable tourism practices, including those eco-friendly activities, but also can charge premium prices. I think yesterday we got a good presentation on the wildlife economy, and through that I also learned a lot of strategies on balancing use of these protected areas to ensure sustainable tourism. And with regard to the two questions on biodiversity attractions, what it referred to our study, actually we had variables that we measured in a 5-point Likert scale, trying to measure biodiversity attraction satisfaction. These were including wildlife abundance, wildlife diversity, and also diversity of birds and those kind of things. So those were measuring the biodiversity satisfaction with biodiversity attraction. And also in terms of tourism service, we were trying to see the services that are offered in the gates, but also hygiene, the road quality, because these parks depend on tourism in the national parks depends on the types of the roads. So it creates, if the roads where a lot of complaints tend to arise. So those are the things which we measured. So once this paper is published, I think you will learn more about it. But so we saw, one question was why Tarangire and not why Tarangire, like tourists were satisfied with Tarangire National Park compared to other national parks in terms of satisfaction. So based on the findings that I said, what we measured on tourism satisfaction were the roads, the hygiene, the gate services. So Tarangire ranked higher compared to other national parks. So maybe we could also do further studies why Tarangire was satisfied compared to other national parks.
All right, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are not able to take more questions, but feel free to interact with the presenters. So let's clap for the presenters and ourselves. It has been an amazing afternoon, a very interesting topic on conflict. So I wish you all a very good evening, and remember that there'll be another session from 1700 hours by West Academy. And last announcement for all the presenters tomorrow, kindly share your presentation for preparation for presentations tomorrow. Otherwise, all have a great afternoon. My names have been Kasaine Sankan. Thank you very much.